It is our mission to try to bring you news you could use. Today is no exception to the rule. We are excited to have on the line with us the head man in charge for Prairie View A&M University Athletics, Mr. Anton Goff. How you doing, sir? And welcome back to the show.
I appreciate it. I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Well, I cannot complain. It's almost football season, man. it's almost football season. That is, they say Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, but I think football season is right up there, man.
Absolutely, for me too. I love it.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, look, we, as you say, welcome back to the show. It's always good to have you on, and we try to keep our people informed, educated, and on the know on what is. I like to think that as long as we've been doing this, I know there are a lot of guys doing it now, and a lot of them are doing it for the fanfare, which is good. But any publicity is better than no publicity, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So you've got a year under your belt now. And as I say, you've had a chance to see the forest through the trees. And from your year in the driver's seat, what are your assessments of where we are right now and where do we need to be heading?
So I think right now we're in a good place. I think we've created some momentum here this past year. For me, it was a great opportunity to get to know about Prairie View athletics, meet a lot of alums, and just try to put some things in place. And so we were able to upgrade some facilities. Obviously, football-wise, we won the West. Got to improve in basketball and some other ones, but I think we're headed in the right direction. One of the things we're going to do is make sure that we're staying on top of the landscape, right? It seems like every other week there's a change in the NCAA with rules, regulations, settlements, all that type stuff. So, making sure that we're, that Prairie View is a leader in this industry, especially at the FCS level, when it comes to NIL, when it comes to the transfer portal, this new house settlement that we're dealing with. And so, it's an exciting time, and we're ready to embrace it. And like you said, getting ready for football season, but not just football season for us. We've got cross country, we've got women's soccer, and we've got volleyball ramping up as well.
Absolutely. Now, it's ironic that you say you've had a chance to learn about Prairie View. What have you learned about Prairie View, pros and cons?
So I think on the pro side, passionate alumni base, right? I've gotten, a lot of suggestions from alums. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I love the passion of the fans, the alums. I truly believe that the majority of the people that are involved with Prairie View as a university, as an athletic department, want the best for it, right? And that's always a good sign when you've got people that really want the best for their university, whether they're alums or whether they're in the area. I think some of the, for us, one of the things, I don't call it a con, but just we've got to improve on our funding for scholarships, especially now where the NCAA next year is moving to a different model where it comes from, there aren't scholarship limits, but there are roster limits. But within those roster limits, you can fund as much scholarships or as little scholarships as you want in those. And so, for instance, you say, softball now will have like 24, 26 roster limits, but if you can afford to fully scholarship all 24, 26 young ladies, you can do that. Same thing from baseball, and they're moving to a 36 roster limit. And so we're trying to wait and see what's going to happen with football. Are they going to bump FCS football up? Or are we going to stay the same, and so, it's an exciting time, but, I think, just for us, we've got to continue to generate revenue. We've got to continue to fundraise. We've got to continue to promote Prairie View athletics.
Okay, it's ironic that you bring that up. We talk about the increase of scholarships. If I'm not mistaken, help me out, baseball went from 11.7 to 15 scholarships with 36 available rosters. And even though the cupboard has been open, where do you put the goods to fit the cupboard to get those deals going? We're already somewhat underfunded in certain areas.
Yeah, so that's what we've got. That's what we've got to look at in our strategic plan as we develop our strategic plan. Like, we've got to be intentional on what we're going to fund and how we're going to fund it, and at what level. Like, so if I say, hey, you know what, we're going to be fully committed in baseball and we're going to provide 36 full scholarships in baseball, where am I getting those 36 scholarships from? You know what I'm saying? Am I lessening scholarships in one program and giving it to baseball, or am I going out and saying, you know what, any additional scholarships we provide, we're going to fundraise for? So those are the things that we've got to look at, because it's not just a baseball thing. Like I said, softball's gone up, volleyball went from 15 to 18. Women's basketball stays at 15. Men's basketball now goes up to 15. So, and like I said, what I mentioned earlier, I'm waiting to see what happens with football, because on the FBS level, they're going to 90 with the roster limit. So now they'll, instead of 85 scholarships, they'll be able to fund 90 full scholarships. So what is the FCS level going to be? And so I think there's a lot of meetings on the FCS level about that to figure out what that's going to look like.
And we know that the NCAA is at a serious crossroads from top to bottom. It seems like that the NCAA business model, has become somewhat of a relic. How do we fix this? How do we correct? Because there's an obvious separation. We got this House bill stuff going. You got the FCS having to foot the bill, if you would, for the mess that is created by the big boys. How do we fix all this, and what's some good solutions to come to a head to this thing?
I think first and foremost, everybody's got to look at it from an individual standpoint, right? We've got to look at it from Prairie View, where we want to invest. And every other FCS school's got to do the same thing. And not just FCS, but those who are in the FBS have to do the same thing, right? And so, just because University of Texas or Texas A&M is doing something, do we need to follow them, right? Obviously, we can't do it from a financial standpoint, but all of these new rules and options, you can opt in. We've got to figure out which ones we're going to opt in. Like, there'll be ability to opt into revenue sharing. Well, what does that look like for Prairie View? What does that look like for another FCS? What does that look like from the SWAC standpoint, right? Can we afford to opt into revenue sharing with our student athletes? I would love to, but is that feasible for us? Not sure. We got to look at the numbers. I think the NCAA is trending in a way that I think they are trying to get out of the business of being the regulator, because they've been sued so many times, right? And so that's one of the reasons why they said, okay, we're now going to take off scholarship limits and just make it roster limits. So now nobody can sue for scholarship limits, right? And now it's up to an individual school. And who knows, like, with the next 5 years, like we've had different talks when we were at the athletic directors convention, and it may be to a point where you pick one or two sports that you're going to fully fund and everybody else isn't fully funded, right? And it's, hey, we're going to put one or two teams into a certain conference and the rest of the teams will be in a kind of localized, regionalized conference, right? Who knows where it's going, but the one thing that we have to do here is do what's best for Prairie View and not try to chase what everybody else is doing.
Absolutely, and that's where it comes, what makes the conference, Southwestern Athletic Conference, it's a dare to be different time in life, and it's a dare to be different conference. But from a logical point of view and from a realist point of view, would it not be better just to set budget limits and minimums, minimums and maximums per division? Like, for example, for your Power Forward, they can start at $1 trillion if they want to. But when you go to your Group 5s and your FCS, because let's be honest, you've been from one place to the next, regardless if it's an HBCU conference or an FCS, they're basically playing with the same dollar bills or have the same issues. So why not just make it a budget per group?
And you know what? That's been discussed. It's funny you say that. That's one of the models that some people propose, is say, hey, you know what? If you're going to be a Power 4 and you're sponsoring football, your budget needs to be at a certain level. If you're at the FBS level, if you're at the FCS level, and it's been kind of that way a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Whereas, if you wanted to be FBS, you had to fund 85 full scholarships, right? At the FCS, you had an option to go up to 63 full scholarships, but you could also be a little bit lower. Well, the way it's being looked at now, that may be a certain way to look at it, and you just tier it by your financial status. What that looks like in the SWAC, not sure, because I'm not aware of everybody's financial situation. But what it does on that level is that it also creates disparity within your conferences, right? Because even in every conference, you have your top 25, your middle, your second tier 25%, your third tier, and then you got your bottom 25. And so, does that now leave out your bottom half, right? Where, say, if we did that in the SWAC, does that leave out half your teams? Your top six do a certain thing, your bottom six do something different. So I think that's something that, people have talked about, but no matter what you do, there's ramifications and unintended consequences. And I think everybody's trying to figure out what's the best way to go.
Well, you bring that up, but we already have that even when it comes to the Commissioner's Cup, because basically with the way that things are, some teams have 14 sports, some teams have 18 sports, so there's already disparity there. So you're going to have a top four that will basically rotate: Prairie View, Alabama State, Jackson State, who else would be, FAMU, and some other schools that offer more sports than others. Isn't that somewhat the same scenario?
Yeah. But if you put in the budget requirements, then maybe those teams that don't have that number of sports or that don't have those number of sports, maybe they can't be in a SWAC now. That's what I'm saying. That could be an unintended consequence, that now we've cut out half the SWAC if we put a certain budget limit in there. And I don't know what that budget limit is. Like I said, I'm not sure about that. But those are some of the things that if you now put these budget limits, depending on what they are, there's going to be some people that can't meet them, and so now your landscape and your conferences change.
Right. Well, they're going to change with or without our input, regardless of what happens. But I'm so sure, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but when you look at this thing, and this is going to be hard to some listeners, but it is what it is. And you all, I know, have this discussion amongst ADs and presidents and other coaches. In Prairie View's case, there are 18 sports, and all of them are important. But let's be honest, you look at the numbers. Some sports are greater of value than others as far as revenue is concerned, and even fan base interests, okay? And 18 sports. There are some schools that are Division III and even Division NAI got 21, 30 sports. That's a lot of sports. Is it possible that you can reassess what you need to be qualified on an FCS level, Division I level, to have the core sports available and all the other sports available in an intramural, regional type deal versus trying to go across the gamut?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. That some people are discussing that is the way to go, or some people are actually predicting that's what's going to happen. That people will choose, like, hey, if I feel like I can win in a certain sport, I will fund it at a certain level and join a conference for that sport. There's a little bit of that happening that people don't know about, like in the Division III. If you look at some of those schools in the Minnesota, Dakota areas, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them are Division III, but Division I in hockey, right?
Right.
And right. So that model is already out there. And what some people are predicting is that that's going to be the model that's going to happen, that you may say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be Division I in football, baseball, volleyball, and softball, and everything else is Division III. And so that could be a way that this is going. I'm not sure. There's so many different models out there that people are predicting. We'll see how it fleshes out, but that could end up being a model because that is already a small model out there when it comes to hockey.
All right, we're talking with Anton Goff, Athletic Director of the Prairie View A&M University Panthers here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network, and we're discussing life as it is today compared to yesterday, not only in the SWAC, but in college athletics. This thing, it seems, has changed so quickly, some with notice, some without notice, and you just gave an early peek in the crystal ball of where you think this thing is heading. Right now, from the vantage point that you see financially with the fan base, the monetary gains and minuses that are coming through student attendance, all the challenges that not just Prairie View but across the gamut have to face. What do you feel as an individual, as a man in charge of athletics at Prairie View, would be best for Prairie View?
And when you say the best for Prairie View, what are you referring to?
The best scenario, whether we stay with the 18 sports, we pick a few sports and go down a division, whether we drop from Division I, period, for whatever finances we have coming in. And I know TV is a great factor in this, but that's another ball for me to pick maybe down the road in this interview. But what do you see is the best scenario for Prairie View?
So right now, I see the best, and I'm just talking about right now because I don't know where the landscape is totally going, and I'll make sure we're on top of that. But right now, I think we got a good model because here's the thing too. People, when they think about athletics, tend to forget about the student-athlete experience. Right? I think we provide a great student-athlete experience. We provide a great recruiting tool because what we do, we also help bring in students to the university as a whole, right? So individuals come to Prairie View because we are a premier FCS Division I institution, right? There's a different feel, there's a different energy when you talk about being Division II, Division III, right? So right now, we are good where we're at. I like where the SWAC is heading. I love the leadership of the SWAC. I think that we continue down this road. Now, when this whole model changes and we figure out where we're at as far as roster limits and whether the model changes as far as now you can pick and choose what conference you want to be in for one or two sports, then we'll figure that out too. Because the one thing I know is we're going to stay competitive, regardless what the model is.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up the word staying competitive. When you are looking at a coach, analyzing a coach, what are you looking at? We know that graduation is a plus, it's a bonus because, as you mentioned, there's student athletes, and we know that it's about wins and losses, about breaks, it's about overcoming whatever the situations, adversities that one face. What and how do you assess coaching, and how do you feel that it's time to turn the page? What is your philosophy and theory behind those factors?
So when I evaluate a coach, first of all, I look at their leadership. I look at the culture of their team, academically, community-wise, as well as competitively. One of the big things I look at are the resources provided versus the outcomes, right? For instance, if you're resourced 8th in this conference as a program and you finish 8th, you're meeting expectations because that's where you're resourced at. Now, if you're resourced in the top 2 or the top 3 and you're finishing 8th, now you're not meeting expectations. Or consequently, if you're resourced at 8, but you're finishing second and third, you're exceeding expectations. So I always try to match the expectations with the resources, right? That's the first and foremost. And then there's intangibles of, facility-wise, your recruiting budgets and those type. But those are analyzed in your resources, right? And so, I hear a lot of people all the time like, oh, how's this person still there, or how come this hasn't been a change, right? Well, you got to look at the resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the big thing for me. And then also I look at, trends, right? What's the past trend? What's the last 3-4 years? I've been here a year, and so I've been able to look at each individual coach, each individual program to see, okay, let me view a little bit of history of them and figure out where they were and where they're at now. And that's how I make my determination on the evaluation of coaches.
Right. Now, you've been involved with some major universities, the Big East with St. John, and this, that, and then. And we know the resources are a total different atmosphere than what we would have at a Prairie View or any other SWAC school, for that matter. When you compare the apples to apples, how close are the parallels into assessing coaches, student athletes, and things of that nature?
So for me, it doesn't change, right? It's all relative. Like if say I'm at Michigan State, right? We don't at Michigan State we didn't have the same budget as Ohio State or Michigan, right? Or some of the other sports, like looking at a Penn State, and individually there were some sports we were in that top 3 or 4, but some of those sports we had, and I think we had like 27 at the time, or almost 31. Some of those sports were towards the bottom of the Big Ten, right? And so I haven't changed my expectations or evaluations from Michigan State, Maryland, St. John's, Kent State, Northern Illinois, even Bowie State, to Prairie View A&M, because it's all relative. You're looking at, first and foremost, the conference you're in, and then you're looking at other like size, like resourced institutions. So for us, I'm looking at the SWAC, and then I'm also looking at the Southland Conference and other FCSs in the area.
Okay. Now, since you narrowed it down to that, based on your budgets, based on resources and results, where do you compare Prairie View with the upper teams or the teams on your level in the SWAC and the Southland?
So we are probably for SWAC like top 3, and then the other institutions, say the Southland, we are probably in the top 4 or 5 within the Southland.
The top 4 or 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, therefore, your expectations would be greater than, say that, and I don't want to call any particular school out, but a school of lesser resources and value.
Well, now it just depends on what sports you're actually talking about. Because overall, yes, but if you're talking about a specific sport, you've got to. Every sport is sourced differently. Like, some people will put more money in their tennis program because they're historically better in tennis, and for some reason they, build up their tennis program or their golf program might be more than me. But I might have more money in my football program than them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay. Well, based on, and I'm keeping it home now with Prairie View, what are the sports that you would consider priority-wise as far as budgets and expectation?
So right now, our highest resource programs are football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball are probably our highest as far as receiving that have been funded. The highest, those 4 sports or 5 sports.
Okay.
That's 4. That's 4. Yeah.
So those 4. And then what would be your second tier? The others would be all following the second tier?
Well, no, you know what? Let me put bowling in there, because bowling is resourced pretty high compared to other bowling
Okay.
things. So those 5 sports. Second tier would probably be probably everybody else. Like we're resourced decent in the rest of those sports, like middle of the pack.
Now, when you say decent, I got some pretty sharp old listeners. We got an older group around here. What would be considered decent? Let's say if you got scholarships available for 15 scholarship players, what would you consider decent on that scale?
I would say a little over half. So if you got 15, you're 7, close to 8, 7.5, 7.5 and above.
Okay. Now, when we're looking at that, and like I say, I try to speak and ask questions from a logical standpoint. If that is where we are on a happy medium, how do we incorporate this other stuff, which I think is unfair to FCS programs, not just SWAC schools? How do we deal with this NIL piece on top of that?
Well, yeah, so that's where you've got to make some decisions on, do I want to fundraise for additional scholarships, or do I want to fundraise for well, I can't really fundraise, but have our donors focus their attention on NIL, right? That's the big question. That was one of the things that we're all dealing with. Was like, well, okay, if I'm fundraising this amount, but I want those same donors to give the NIL, are they going to now give less to me and give more to the actual student athlete, or are they going to now give more than what they've been given, right? Some cases, donors have given more. Some cases, they've split their donations, so now you're getting a little less, but the student athlete's getting more. Some cases, they've said, you know what, I really want to affect the lives of an individual student athlete, so I'll take my money, instead of giving it to the athletic department, I'll give it to the student athlete. Well, right. You've got to figure out the equation of, okay, if we're offering NIL, does that help get a better quality student athlete, or do we want to focus on the scholarship piece? Does that help us get a better student athlete?
Yeah, the bottom line, it becomes donors fatigue, because I don't care how big or small your institution is, you're only going to have a very small percentage core of donors, and then the old term robbing Peter to pay Paul, because everybody wants to be a part of the movement, as I call it. And if I only have, I'm just use $100, and I've been accustomed to doing $100 in one area, now you ask me to help for another area, then now I got 4 different categories. So instead of me giving 100 to one area, I got to give 25 to each area, because my budget is still my budget, right? Exactly. And so even though it looks like, oh man, we got more support on this area, the money's not coming out the same.
Exactly.
So, man, you're in a little conundrum right about now, huh?
Yeah, and we all are. So it's not like it's a Prairie View thing; it's a everybody thing.
Absolutely,
and that's what we're all
trying
to, and that's what we're all trying to figure out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it becomes, a varying model for each particular sport. Right, because if you're already funded at a high level for a particular sport, then I don't have to worry about scholarships. And if I think that the NIL thing will help that particular sport get a better quality student athlete, then you can focus on the NIL piece for that one. But if I'm at a low scholarship level, like, does the NIL help? Because you need 1 or 2 high level student athletes that can make a high impact on that particular sport, or is it a big roster sport where, you know what, one or two high level student athletes isn't going to make a difference. I need to focus on the scholarships and bring in a quantity of student athletes, right? And so that's where you've got to be strategic on what you're doing for each sport.
Well, and when you bring up that NIL, we hear all the time where a kid out of high school got offered $500,000 to come to one school. That's not our reality. And people
No.
back when I say that. And from your vantage point, what is a realistic NIL deal that I know the sky's the limit, but based on budgets that you see every day and that your counterpart have to deal with, what is a realistic, what we consider a realistic NIL deal for players on our level?
So I would say if you're talking football, basketball, you're talking anywhere between 15 and 100. And when I say 100,
15.
100,000, 15,000 to 100.
Okay, now that's a wider spectrum than I thought you would have said. I could see maybe the 15, but 100 would be stretching. When hell, some teams can't even, or programs can't even afford $100,000 just for cleats.
You got some FCS programs out there now that'll put all their eggs in one basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to get a Power 4 quarterback that might not have played at the Power 4 level sitting there or lost their position because they brought somebody else in. Like, you've got programs out there that just put all their eggs in one basket. Like, hey man, we need a quarterback. And so now everybody, now that kid might be one of three people getting an NIL deal, right? But that's where they put their money.
Well,
or you may have, or you may have, or you may have 10 kids on that team making 10,000. You see what I'm saying?
I'm thinking where I can see NIL working on our level. And when I'm saying our level, I'm not just limiting it to SWAC, but I'm talking about FCS. And you're the AD. I'm an AD for the day today. If I'm in this NIL position where I see NIL being advantage and strategic with the basketball because of the limited rosters, male and female. Okay, and you can get the quickest return on investment because of the potential involvement with the NCAA tournament. Football is the big piece, but it's so many moving parts on it because you can have that money on a quarterback, but if you don't have an interior line to protect them, it's all for naught anyway.
Absolutely. But it also comes down to donor passion, right? If I really care about football and I'm really into quarterbacks, I might just put my money, because as an athletic director, I can't tell them where to put it or direct them to it. It is a deal between that individual or that organization and the young man or the young lady, right? So that's the one thing about NIL is, like, it's kind of out of my hands, right? I can't say, hey, I need you to pay this person this amount of money. It's hey, you know what? I really want to bring a top level quarterback here. I know you guys are recruiting or can recruit this young man. I'm going to do an NIL deal with them where they represent my organization, and I'm going to pay them X amount of dollars.
Right. Now, I know the institutions have nothing to do with the NIL package as a whole because those are like third-party deals. But would you be in agreement, like say, for instance, I created an NIL deal for some student athletes at Prairie View, and then for whatever reason, they hit the portal. Do you think it is fair to cease the NIL commitment or have them sign a contract where it'd be like a breach of contract? If they do transfer, they have to give some of that money back like a buyout?
So I think that the best deal is to say, as long as you are representing this organization, whether it be Prairie View or any other school, this is your NIL deal. Once you transfer, then obviously a lot of times people are transferring to get a better NIL deal. So once they transfer, then that NIL deal becomes null and void, and they go on. I wouldn't be a proponent of them paying it back. Like, if they fulfilled their obligation for the academic year, then it is what it is.
Okay, or if there were stipulations that you can get this NIL as long as you keep your not only the image on and off the field, but the also the grades and the behavior on and off the field.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of NILs deals are based on that because if you're not eligible, you can't play, and so if you're not playing or eligible to play, then they can cancel your NIL deal. And other things are appearances in the community, signing autographs, doing social media posts for that company or whatever it is. So the NIL deal can have a lot of different components in it, right? What it can't be is a strictly pay for play where, hey, I'm gonna give you this money, and now you're just on a team and you don't have to do anything. There's some requirements for the NIL deal to be completed and transacted.
Well, that sounds good, but we know what's going on, sir. And I understand that you got to say those right things, but man,
No,
they're
no, no.
probably
But they do have to do something. That's what I'm saying.
oh
Like
yes,
that's
sir.
in their contract.
Yes, sir. We're talking with Anton Goff, athletic director of the Prairie View A&M University Panthers, and I'm really appreciative of you being available with this. You've had a chance to go through a 4-year cycle of all sports. You're coming up now where I'm thinking that you got a strategic plan to move forward for the next however many years. You're going to have somewhat of a explosion year I'm projecting for attendance because in historic past, the even years at Prairie View have always been a great draw, especially since the new stadium. You host the Labor Day Classic this year. You'll have teams like Southern coming into town. Of course, there's homecoming, and this year is the year that Prairie View is going to be the host school for the State Fair Classic, which is a big attendance draw. With that being said, what plans do you have for 25 as far as adding to 24 to increase the attendance at these games?
So the plan is win the West, win the SWAC, win the Celebration Bowl.
Oh, that's the plan. If you win, they'll come.
That's the plan.
Okay. Now, since you bring that up, it's a little disheartening sometimes, and I'm going back to football now. If you got one game to win, and it's your last game, it's senior day.
Yep.
And let's just say the stands are empty. That's disheartening.
It is.
And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just trying to be a realist on because people, we have a lot of casual fans at Prairie View, okay?
Yeah.
And because of that, they'll glance at a paper clip or they'll hear a podcast such as this or whatever they'll get on Facebook, social media, and they think all is well without actually coming there and being a part of it and not understanding it. And I think part of the challenge is because we have such a casual fan base. They're passionate to a degree, but when I say this, hopefully it's making sense to you. What I'm seeing as a personal challenge to PV Nation is we don't have alpha fans. I ain't talking about Alpha Phi Alpha. I'm talking about the hardcore fan that road trip, we going to get there on the road, we going to go do what we got to do, we going to be rambunctious in the area where they don't want to come on this side of the stadium or the gymnasium because they know they're going to get it over here. That's a big piece to me, and I think that is going to require more than just winning the West, winning the SWAC, and the Celebration Bowl.
Nah, yeah, I got you, man. So basically, we've got to keep educating our undergrad, and we've got to keep interacting with the alums, right? I try to make myself available, not just podcasts like this, but to our different chapters of the Alumni Association, imploring them to get to games, educating them on, when games are, giving them input. I started Ask the AD, right, where fans and alums can literally interact with me on a regular basis, or when they have suggestions, can get on Ask the AD, hit me up, and I can respond to them with like, hey, great idea, or we've tried that, or we're actually doing that, or can't do that because it's NCAA violation, or things of that nature. I think just trying to get people to be more immersed in athletics and to understand athletics at a different level. But it's a tradition thing here, right? Like we've got to continue to have outreach and try to get people in this stadium and to emphasize how important it is, right, for them to be here, for that support for our student athletes, and not just in the football stadium, but in the basketball stadium, soccer, baseball, all that, for all of our sports, man. Because I can tell you, for a student athlete experience level, having fans in the venue, one gives you a little more energy, but it gives you a great experience of being a student athlete and an overall standpoint.
No doubt. And these are my words. You can agree to disagree or just say no comment. Does it appear that the fan base at Prairie View could be a bit complacent at times?
You know what? I don't know. I'm into the game, so I'm not the casual person that's sitting there and gauging how loud it's like. I'm into the game. Like what I'm trying to do first and foremost is win a game, right? So I get comments all the time like, oh, the band played this or the band didn't play this, and I'm like, I'm so oblivious to that.
Right,
Mr. Prince,
right.
Because I'm focusing on the operations of the game. I'm running around, I'm doing presentations and all that, and so I think that one of the things I think is that we had this super long losing streak, right? And I think when we made this stadium, a lot of people came. We started having success, and I think people sometimes expect success, but don't show up for the work, like you say. You know what I'm saying? Like when we this last year, our senior day, right? We had a chance to win the West, and the stands weren't packed, right? And I was a little disappointed in that because I was like, yo, we had an opportunity to win the West, and shoot, during the middle of the season, I heard from a lot of folks that, didn't think we were having a good season, right? And they let me know we weren't having a good season, but then we turned it around and won the games we needed to win and had an opportunity to win it. And I would have thought like, hey, a lot more people would have came. Plus it's senior day, you're sending off this class in the right way, you know what I'm saying? Recognizing them for their efforts throughout their years that they had been here. And so I think those type of things that we've just got to make sure that we as an athletic department, one, are telling our story, two, doing as much outreach as possible, and then also making sure our students here on campus are aware and making it a tradition, because when you do it as an undergrad, then you do it as a graduate, right?
Right.
It becomes tradition, and so that's what we're trying to build here.
Well, as part of that tradition of that long losing streak that you referred to, I was actually part of it being in the belly of the beast. And believe it or not, attendance were strong. The games were attended well up until halftime. after the band did its thing, then, if it was close, you would hang around, then it's, oh, here we go, another one. Then they start fading out. But
yeah,
but there are so many things that are a result and the residue of that era, and you can research it yourself. You got plenty of qualified people who are there. As a result of that dark age for Prairie View, many of those student athletes who have grown up and graduated, gone on and been productive citizens in the world have been forgotten. They were not totally appreciate it because they were associated as quote unquote losers. Okay. Now the challenge that I'm seeing, that generation child is now a member of Prairie View or in this midst, and because of the horror stories that their parents are sharing with them, I think that's part of the problem. I really do. And we don't like to address things like that, but that's when the rubber truly meets the road and you start making differences in culture change. Because you can bring in ADs, no disrespect to you, Prairie View's had their merry-go-round of ADs, and the ideals are there, but things get knocked down because people get set in their ways, and they keep things submerged because, let's be honest, a lot of people benefit when things stay the same.
Facts.
You know, I didn't mean to make this a dreary segment of the show.
No. You keeping it real. I appreciate that, and that's a good observation.
You know, so when we look at it, it's like an injection. I know you've been asked the directors, and have you researched? And I know there are key groups that are financially supportive, but the key is not finding those who will continue to give whatever they have available. Is there are so many graduates and student athletes who have gone through not just the Prairie Views, but the Grams. Like I say, it's not just at Prairie View, but I'm a product of Prairie View, so that's why I talk about Prairie View. What are we doing to try to tap into that data of PV students, whether they graduated or not, but they came through here at one time?
Yeah, so not just working with development, because those are the people that are given. I work very closely with alumni affairs, with the National Alumni Association, with the chapters, right, and trying to identify not just former student athletes, but former students, you know what I'm saying, that never given, but then also what I call the 290 corridor people, right? There are people that have a lot of love for PV that maybe didn't go to PV, right? Right. Maybe their parents, grandparents went here, or they just came to the games because that's what they could afford, or that was just their affinity, right? And so they grew up around PV, and so that's the Cypress area, the Spring, Woodlands, Katy, all that around 99, and it's trying to get those individuals involved as well. So we've got a very robust effort out there when it comes to fundraising, and we're in a process of right now, from a university standpoint, of looking to hire a new vice president for advancement that'll be able to coalesce all the foundation, the development office, Marcom, all those things, so we can do that not just from an athletic standpoint, but a university standpoint.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I'm wishing nothing but success in that area, because it's a well-deserved and overdue process that needs to be addressed, and I think there's so many great opportunities. I've been a transplant now I've been married 34 years, so 36, 37 years that I've been in this area, and it's a dynamic area when you understand beneath the surface. I think we get caught up on the fact that we're so close to Houston, that we are in this certain system, and that we got a lot of wonderful things on the campus. But when you get to know the landscape near and dear to you, I heard you call off the Cypress and the Katie's and all that, and I'm about to be a homer again. Waller County have a lot of dynamic people. There's a lot of money in Waller County, and we keep missing that. We're leapfrogging over that. But like I said, I'm not going to make this a drawn out political thing here. I'm thanking you, man, for being able to let me ask my little questions and do my little part to try to keep us rolling along here, because I know a lot of people who hear this think I'm anti-PV, but I'm not anti. I really am not. And you may have your opinion one way or the other, but I know where my heart is.
Nah, like I said earlier, man. There's a lot of passionate people, man, that care about PV, want the best for PV, and I know you're one of them. And if I didn't think that, I wouldn't be on your show, man. So, I appreciate what you do, and continue doing your thing. And like I said, man, you got my number. Anytime you want me on, or anytime you got questions for me, I'm here for you.
No doubt about it. And we also appreciate you allowing Open Mic to hang around the athletic department so we can continue doing what we're doing. You know what I mean? Because we're not the renegades. We're not the rogues. So, I got the AD on the line with you. So when y'all hear us reporting and doing our thing, we're there legally. Can I get a witness?
Yes,
Well, Brother Goff, man, it has really been a thrill. I want to give you some opportunities for some closing thoughts or comments, and the floor is now yours, sir.
Yeah, so once again, man, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I tell people all the time, like, I've been here a year. I feel like I've been here 7 years, and I say that in a way that it's a good thing, right? I feel like I've been here for a long time because so many people have embraced me. So many people have supported me, not just supported me, but supported our athletic department. I'm excited about this year as far as, like you said, this even year. Not only do we have those games at home, but we also got Florida A&M, and then obviously Alcorn State, and so I think we're poised to do some things football-wise. I'm excited about this fall volleyball season, and I think the rest of our sports are gonna improve, and so I'm excited. I want to thank the people that are listening for their support, and just encourage them, come out to the games, even if you can't come out physically, buy tickets, donate them. Let's just fill these stands and create a true home court, home field advantage for our student athletes here at Prairie View A&M University.
All right. Thank you again, sir. He is Anton Goff, Athletic Director for the Prairie View A&M University Panthers. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter X at The Mike Prince Show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Open Mic Broadcast Network, and visit our website for 24-hour streaming at obnradio.com. And until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.